Hey guys, Mrs. Kirkhoff here. Let's take a look at section 3 of the most dangerous game. So a little bit of context. Zorov has decided to give Rainsford shelter and he's offered him clothing, a place to stay, and now they're sitting down to have drinks and have a meal together. Paragraph 1. They were eating borscht, the rich red soup with whipped cream so dear to Russian palates. Half apologetically, General Zorov said, "We do our best to preserve the amenities of civilization here. Please forgive any lapses. We are well off the beaten track, you know. Do you think the champagne has suffered from its long ocean trip?" So this paragraph is telling us a lot about Zorov. We can see here that his Russian heritage has a huge influence on him. He not only mentions it, but he um, is eating borscht, which is a traditional Russian dish that is made from beets. Something else that we learn about Zorov here is the fact that he's trying to be refined. We know that he has a lot of a lot of money based on his home that he lives in, and so this seems to be a little bit off kilter from some of the things that he said. Yesterday, when we were reading, you probably remember Zorov made a racist comment in regards to Ivan, saying that he was a savage. And savage back then didn't mean like awesome and cool the way it does now. Savage essentially was a put down or a negative way to describe someone as having or lacking manners and being unrefined. So it seems a little bit odd that Zorov is trying to have civilized and refined a lifestyle when he's saying things that are racist and rude and not very caring. Paragraph 2. Not in the least, declared Rainsford. He was finding the general a most thoughtful and affable host, a true cosmopolite. But there was one small trait of the general's that made Rainsford uncomfortable. Whenever he looked up from his plate, he found the general studying him, appraising him narrowly. "Perhaps," said General Zoroff, "you are surprised that I recognized your name. You see, I read all books on hunting published in English, French, and Russian. I have but one passion in my life, Mr. Rainsford, and it is the hunt." "You have some wonderful heads here," said Rainsford, as he ate a particularly well-cooked filet mignon. "The Cape buffalo is the largest I ever saw," which there's a picture right here for you guys. You can see what a Cape buffalo would look like, how massive. I can't even imagine um, how many tons that thing weighs. And then the fact that it has these horns, those could definitely do some serious damage. Paragraph 5. "Oh, that fellow. He was a monster." "Did he charge you?" "Hurled me against a tree," said the general. "Fractured my skull, but I got the brute." "I've always thought," said Rainsford, "that the Cape buffalo is the most dangerous of all big game." Oops, I scrolled a little bit too far, you guys. Hang tight with me. There we go. Paragraph 9. For a moment the general did not reply. He was smiling his curious red-lipped smile. Then he said slowly, "No, you are wrong, sir. The Cape buffalo is not the most dangerous big game." He sipped his wine. "Here in my preserve on this island," he said in the same slow tone, "I hunt more dangerous game." Rainsford expressed his surprise. "Is there big game on this island?" The general nodded. "The biggest." "Really?" "Oh, it isn't here naturally, of course. I have to stock the island." "What have you imported, General?" Rainsford asked. "Tigers?" Let's pause for a moment and see if you can make a prediction on what he stocked the island with. Okay, paragraph 15. The general smiled. "No," he said, "hunting tigers ceased to interest me some years ago. I exhausted their possibilities, you see. No thrill left in tigers, no real danger. I live for danger, Mr. Rainsford." The general took from his pocket a gold cigarette case and offered his guest a long black cigarette with a silver tip. It was perfumed and gave off a smell like incense. So again, this is another example of how Zorov is supposed to be elegant and refined and wealthy and civilized. The fact that he has a gold cigarette case. And back then, smoking wasn't looked at as a negative. It was a hobby, it was a pastime that a lot of people did, and it wasn't that no one knew that it was bad for your health back at that time. And the fact that his cigarettes are perfumed and his cigarette has a silver tip and it smells like incense, all of those things would cost a lot of money to have imported onto this island. So it's giving us this impression that Zoroff is trying to be refined and elegant and civilized. Paragraph 17. "We will have some capital hunting, you and I," said the general. "I shall be most glad to have your society." "But what game—" began Rainsford. "I'll tell you," said the general. "You will be amused, I know. I think I may say in all modesty that I have done a rare thing. I have invented a new sensation. May I pour you another glass of port?" "Thank you, General." And in this picture, you can see a picture of what Zoroff might look like, one artist's interpretation of that. The general filled both glasses and said, "God makes some men poets, some he makes kings, some beggars. Me he made a hunter. My hand was made for the trigger," my father said. He was a very rich man with 250,000 acres in the Crimea, and he was an ardent sportsman. When I was only 5 years old, he gave me a little gun, specially made in Moscow for me to shoot sparrows with. When I shot some of his prize turkeys with it, he did not punish me. He complimented me on my marksmanship. I killed my first bear in Caucasus when I was 10. My whole life has been one prolonged hunt. I went into the army. It was expected of noblemen's sons, and for a time commanded a division of Cossack cavalry. But my real interest was always the hunt. I have hunted every kind of game in every land. It would be impossible for me to tell you how many animals I have killed. So we knew early on in the story that Rainsford was a really experienced hunter, but now we're realizing that Zoroff makes Rainsford look like a child playing games compared to the hunting and the experience that Zoroff has. And one thing I wanted to point out, Zoroff says that he was part of the Cossack cavalry. So we know he has a lot of Russian heritage, and a Cossack, essentially, they were an elite group of warriors in southern Russia. A lot of them were elite horsemen as well, famous for their fierceness in battle. So not only was this a hobby of Zoroff's, and not only was it something that he enjoyed during his childhood and something that he could do with his father, this is essentially what he made his career out of, was hunting and battle and becoming this warrior. And so it's more than just a hobby that he does in his spare time. This is his entire life. Paragraph 22. The general puffed at his cigarette. "After the debacle in Russia, I left the country, for it was imprudent for an officer of the Czar to stay there. Many noble Russians lost everything. I, luckily, had invested heavily in American securities, so I shall never have to open a tea room in Monte Carlo or drive a taxi in Paris." So this right here is a reference to the Russian Revolution, which occurred in 1917. And keep in mind that this story was written in 1924. So um, Richard Connell wrote this story not long after all of that happened. So essentially, in 1917, the Russian ruler, or the Tsar, was overthrown by the people, and they put into place a communist government. And things did not go well in the long run, but in 1924, we are still kind of waiting to see how everything would turn out. But essentially, Zoroff, we're going to find out in a minute how he made his money. He invested it in American securities, like he invested it in American things, so he wouldn't have lost his money when everything turned communist and everything essentially went and ended up going to the government. All right, paragraph 23, the fourth line down. "Naturally, I continued to hunt. Grizzlies in your Rockies, crocodiles in the Ganges, rhinoceroses in East Africa. It was in Africa that the Cape buffalo hit me and laid me up for 6 months. As soon as I recovered, I started for the Amazon to hunt jaguars, for I had heard they were unusually cunning. They weren't. the Cossack sighed. They were no match at all for a hunter with his wits about him and a high-powered rifle. I was bitterly disappointed. I was lying in my tent with a splitting headache one night when a terrible thought pushed its way into my mind. Hunting was beginning to bore me, and hunting, remember, had been my life. I have heard that in America, businessmen often go to pieces when they give up the business that has been their life. Yes, that's so, said Rainsford. The general smiled. I had no wish to go to pieces, he said. I must do something. Now, mine is an analytical mind, Mr. Rainsford. Doubtless that is why I enjoy the problems of the chase. Oh, no doubt, General Zoroff. So, continued the general, I asked myself why the hunter no longer fascinated me. You are much younger than I am, Mr. Rainsford, and have not hunted as much, but you perhaps can guess the answer. What was it? Simply this. Hunting had ceased to be what you call a sporting proposition. It had become too easy. I always got my quarry or prey, always. There is no greater bore than perfection. The general lit a fresh cigarette. All right, paragraph 30. No animal had a chance with me anymore. That is no boast. It is a mathematical certainty. The animal had nothing but his legs and his instinct. Instinct is no match for reason. When I thought of this, it was a tragic moment for me, I can tell you. Ransford leaned across the table, absorbed in what his host was saying. It came to me as an inspiration what I must do, the general went on. And that was. The general smiled, the quiet smile of one who has faced an obstacle and surmounted it with success. I had to invent a new animal to hunt, he said. A new animal? You're joking. Not at all, said the general. I never joke about hunting. I needed a new animal. I found one. So I built this island, built this house, and here I do my hunting. The island is perfect for my purposes. There are jungles with a maze of traits in them, hills, swamps. But the animal, General Zoro? Let's take a moment and see if you can take a guess at what this animal might be. Make a prediction. Paragraph 38. Oh, said the general, it supplies me with the most exciting hunting in the world. No other hunting compares with it for an instant. Every day I hunt, and I never grow bored now, for I have a quarry with which I can match my wits. Rainsford's bewilderment showed in his face. So this is something to think about, right? What type of animal could Rainsford hunt? What kind of creature could, I'm sorry, not Rainsford, Zoroff hunt that could match his wits with his own? Paragraph 40. I wanted the ideal animal to hunt, explained the general. So I said, what are the attributes of an ideal quarry? And the answer was, of course, it must have courage, cunning, and above all, it must be able to reason. But no animal can reason, objected Rainsford. My dear fellow, said the general, there is one that can. But you can't mean, gasped Rainsford. And why not? I can't believe you are serious, General Zoroff. This is a grisly joke. Why should I not be serious? I am speaking of hunting. Hunting? Good God, General Zoroff, what you speak of is murder. The general laughed with entire good nature. He regarded Rainsford quizzically. I refuse to believe that so modern and civilized a young man as you seem to harbor romantic ideas about the value of human life. Surely your experiences in the war did not make me condone cold-blooded murder, finished Rainsford stiffly. So if you haven't guessed it already, the animal that Zoroff has created for his hunt is humans. Zoroff is hunting humans. So when he says that he wants a creature that can match his wits with his own, the only thing that's equal to his own is a human. And when he says he wants an animal that has courage, cunning, and can reason, right, can think logically through a problem, the only one that can do that is a human being. So now it seems like the pieces of the puzzle are finally starting to fall into place. If we think back to a few days ago when we initially started reading the story, do you remember how the sailors on the ship and even the captain, everyone felt very uneasy and nervous as they were approaching this island called Ship Trap Island? So now it makes sense, right? People get trapped on this island and they don't escape because Zoroff is hunting them. Another thing Whitney said when he was describing this island that even cannibals wouldn't want to live here. These humans are being tracked down and killed in cold blood by Zoroff. And we know that Rainsford isn't necessarily the most compassionate person, right? When Whitney was trying to talk to Rainsford about the animals that they were hunting and feeling sympathy for the fact that they were going to be killing them, Rainsford just kind of brushed it off. But here, even this is too much even for Rainsford. The fact that Zoroff is hunting and killing humans, Rainsford can't fathom this, and he describes it as cold-blooded murder. So Rainsford definitely has a line. He definitely has, it seems, a standard for himself on acceptable behavior, and Rainsford enjoys the hunt just as much as Zoroff does, but he draws the line at hunting human beings. One last thing I want to bring your attention to was when Rainsford was initially shipwrecked on this island and he was trying to come into contact, trying to find a human to help him because he had no supplies and not even clothes. He came across a scene where it looked like someone had been hunting a large game animal, right? That's the whole reason he fell off the ship because he heard gunshots and he heard screaming. Um, and if you remember that section in the text, when Rainsford describes the scream of the animal, it's strange to him because he can't recognize the sound of that animal's scream. It's some animal he's never heard before. And maybe we didn't catch on to that in the moment when we were initially reading this, but now it makes sense, right? And the fact that when he approaches this scene, the bullet casing was from a 22, that seemed a little bit odd. That wasn't really the appropriate weapon to hunt a big game, a large animal. And now it kind of makes sense is if Zoroff is this hunting freak essentially who gets a thrill from hunting humans and enjoys the chase, he's going to want to try to challenge himself by using a weapon that's going to make it even harder to kill his prey or the human being in question. So this will conclude our reading for today. This concludes section 3. Next time we'll start section 4 and you will be able to see how this conversation plays out between Rainsford and Zoroff on the subject of hunting humans. Also, please make sure that you go back into Google Classroom and you answer the question that's posted in section 3 for Most Dangerous Game.